Okay, we are now live on YouTube, everybody.
Thank you. Then we can start the meeting. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Corporate Parenting Committee. This is the November 2020 meeting for Peterborough City Council. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching this live stream of this meeting via the Council's YouTube page. Due to the government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is being held remotely. A decision summary of minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the Council's YouTube page. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, I ask all members of the committee to keep their video cameras switched on for the full duration of the meeting, and to keep their microphone muted except when I invite them to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way. Any members wishing to ask questions or make a comment should indicate this by clicking the raised hand function in the participant screen. This is the blue virtual hand. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question, and then mute it again to allow the officer to respond, and lower your virtual hand. As with all new arrangements, especially those involving new systems, there is always a risk that we may run into technical problems, and I would ask you for your patience if we do. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed, and the public broadcast will be paused. If it's not possible for the address the fault, the meeting will be abandoned until such times as it can be reconvened. I will begin by doing a roll call of members of the committee. If members can confirm their attendance by saying here or yes. So we'll go with Councillor Ayres.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bashir, did she manage to make it in?
No, we don't have Councillor Bashir as yet.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
Present.
Councillor Harper. Sorry, Councillor Harper, we can't hear you. Right, I can see you there, but maybe you have to look at your volume or something. Councillor Haynes.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Present.
Councillor Skipstead. No, I don't see that. And myself, I'm Councillor Ray Bisbee. Officers in attendance. The list I have.
Chair. Sorry, Councillor Lane present as well.
Oh, sorry, I was going to ask at the end. So Councillor Lane, I do apologise. So officers in attendance, we have Nicola Curley.
Sorry, good evening. I missed that bit because I'm afraid I was thrown out by Zoom, but good evening, everyone. I'm Assistant Director for Children's Services.
Thank you. Myra O'Farrell.
Here, I'm Head of Service for Corporate Parenting for Peterborough.
Dee Glover.
Good evening, I'm Dee Glover, Head Teacher at the Peterborough Virtual School for Children in Care.
Shalina Chandu.
Good evening, Shalina Chandu. You did pronounce that right, thanks. Quality Assurance Lead, Peterborough City Council.
Myra Ali.
Hi,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, Maria Ali.
Thanks. Hi, present. Youth Voice Worker for Peterborough City Council.
Sarah Hamilton.
Yeah, here, Head of Safeguarding People for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough CCG, and been supporting our LAC health teams during our vacancy. Thank
you. Dr. Mona Aslam. I think she's logged out, has she?
She's left, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Mary Saunders.
Good evening, Marie Saunders, Deputy Safeguarding Lead, and manage some of the IROs at Peterborough City Council.
Linda Conroy.
Good evening, present. I'm one of the independent reviewing officers.
Thank you. Michaela Berry.
Hi, I'm Michaela Berry and I'm the Group Manager in the Corporate Parenting Service.
Joe Gilbert.
Hi, I'm Joe Gilbert. I'm the Specialist Person Advisor for the Local Offer for Care Leavers for Cambridgeshire County Council.
Thank you. And others in attendance from the Foster Carer Forum, we should have Stephen Green. Did he manage to get in? No, I'm taking it he didn't.
Yes, he should be in the meeting now. Sorry, Councillor Bisbee, but he should be in the meeting. I can see, yes.
I can see his video. Stephen, can you hear us? I know he's having technical difficulties. Jenny Winters.
Yes, Jenny Winters, foster care in Peterborough.
Right. Before I go to item 1, can I ask all those people that are presenting their reports tonight, I am expecting that everybody has read their reports that have been given to them in advance. So if you're presenting, could you just give a very small highlights, if you wish, and any new items, if that could be done. So welcome to everybody. I will start with item 1. Apologies for absence. Karen, do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Bashir, but she does intend to join the meeting later if possible.
Thank you. Item 2, members' interest. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? If so, please can they raise their virtual hand now? I don't see any hands raised, so we'll go on to item 3. This is the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of November 2019. Members are asked to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday the 20th of November 2019. Do I have a proposer?
I'll be happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Do we have a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Pond. Does anybody have any issues with those minutes before we do finally agree them? Are there any corrections, alterations that you wish to make? No, I don't see any hands, so we'll accept those minutes. Thank you. Item 4 is an update from the Foster Carer Forum. Stephen, I hope we can hear you now. Can I ask Stephen Green and Jenny Winters to present their report?
It's Jenny Winters here. It's Stephen that's going to be doing this. I haven't been briefed on this at all. It's just I'm here to support if necessary.
I think if Stephen is still experiencing technical difficulties, Sue King is in attendance at the meeting and can present the report.
If you would like to, Sue, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Stephen passed on the report to me, and Jenny, I think, was also in attendance if there are any questions, but in relation to foster carers, did resume foster carer meetings towards the end of the summer. Pretty much picked up where they left off, had an AGM, and Stephen was reinstated as the chair. And other committee members were appointed. There are some areas picked up in relation to transport, in relation to contact training. Events sadly couldn't go ahead this year, but training has been resumed for foster carers. A nice point to note in terms of finance was that an extra payment was made to foster carers. And also I think it was really positive for foster carers that SENCOs and class teachers kept in touch with foster carers and the young people at home. So if there are any questions, I'll do my best.
Thank you. Councillor Linares, I see your hand raised.
It certainly is. Thank you and good evening. I want to say, first of all, thank you very much for this report, Jenny, and I'm hoping that Stephen can hear as well, because we do recognise the tremendous importance and dedication of our foster carers, which has been particularly shown, I might add, since the COVID-19 pandemic came on, and that's been absolutely wonderful how everybody's reacted. I did want to thank you for that publicly. With regard to the report, there were two things that I thought that I ought to sort of probably look into, or if somebody else can comment, probably Nicola or somebody can comment on. And one is in paragraph 431 about the staying put agreements, and how the there is no notice has to be given to the foster carers. And I just thought that probably that should be either explained or looked into in any event, and if necessary I will look into that beyond this meeting. And secondly, the other thing was to do with transport, where there seems to have been some problems. And again, it's unfortunate. I should have realised I needed to mention this to the assistant director who deals with transport for the city council, and I would like to raise that as well with her. But I'm afraid it will be after this meeting, unless anybody else has got anything to say about it. So these are the 2 points that I wanted to ask about.
Thank you, Councillor Ayres. Sue, have you anything to in relation to that at all?
What I'm aware of is that I think Myra has regular meetings in relation to transport, so she may be able to assist at further meetings. And in relation to the staying put,
sorry, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Oh, here you are.
I am on now, sorry. Did you want me to answer those 2 questions? I've just heard that about staying put. What the issues were.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, what the issues was that I had a young lady that did stay and put with me, and what she got up, walked out, decided that she didn't want anything to do with anybody. When I spoke to the PA, he said, I can't tell you anything. I can't tell you where she is, if she's safe or not. And it was really frustrating that she walked out. We had an agreement that, you know, if she left, we'd give her 28 days, she'd give us 28 days. And what the PA said, exact words to me was, that piece of paper that you signed means as nothing. And she'd done some damage before she left. And I spoke to the PA and he said, well, you have to call the police and they'll take it as a criminal damage. But what that would affect her career in the Navy. So that was what the staying put for me was. And also I've got a young lady going to college going to university next year. And she's really concerned. What it is if she comes home at weekends, there's nothing for the carer. They'll only pay for like 4 weeks and they'll only look after her for a year at uni. And it was just quite woolly, the information. So what I have asked is a PA is coming out next week to the one going to uni and to explain it more to her. And it's just, there seems to be no protection for the carer in any way, shape or form. And that's where I felt really vulnerable that a young lady walked out of my house and the PA can't tell me where she is. So that was the one, and
yeah,
on the staying put.
Yeah, anything on the transport one?
On the transport, what it was we had some carers saying that taxis have been turning up 3 weeks after children have left to pick them up. And also it's a bit woolly who organises the transport, if the social worker does it, if the carer does it. And all we ask for is if it's been organised, if an email could come from the transport saying, yes, it's been organised, because what it is, you're waiting for a taxi, if it doesn't turn up, and that transport's going to contact, it's quite important at the moment. And also with transport, one of my young ladies, has been put in with two other children that aren't in her bubble at school. And they said it's purely down to cost. And it shouldn't come down to cost, especially with what we're going through at the moment.
No. Does any of the officers want to take that on?
So Councillor Bisbee, I think I appreciate what Stephen's saying. I think what I would say, Stephen, is we're talking about individual situations with some of your young people. So I'm not sure that a public meeting is quite the right place to get into the detail about the detail of that. So what I will ask Myra to do is have a conversation with you separately about your individual young people. I think in terms of staying put generally, we entirely recognise that it is a hopefully usually a maturing for young people entering into, yes, a bit more of a contractual situation, slightly less formal than a real rental situation, but they are meant to be we are trying to treat the young people care leavers as adults and start to move into a more contractual arrangement. Most times that works extremely well. And there's some very largely our staying put arrangements are very effective. There are occasionally situations where they don't work. And again, I'm very happy to look at what we can do to tighten up the policy and be a bit clearer about that with young people. And I'm sure Myra and I will take that forward. I think in terms of the school transport, it is a very complicated issue. And again, I think that it's probably something that I'll happily take back to John Lewis, who's Service Director for Education, and have some further discussions with him. But I do know that it has been thought about incredibly carefully, and we haven't made decisions. I want to reassure people purely on the basis of cost, but it is a very complicated logistical situation. So I'm not in a position to say categorically what has or hasn't happened with that, but we are trying very hard to meet the needs of young people to get to school, the needs of schools to try and stay open and continue to deliver education, and obviously the needs of our carers and their families to try and manage, what is a very difficult situation at the moment. So I'll happily take those away and look at
back
them.
on the staying put. I mean, I've spoken to lots of carers that I believe it's a really good thing. I don't think that we should just get to 18 and say, right, it's finished. I think it's really good. It has, in a way, left a bit of a bad taste with us. But what the frustration is, I've had a conversation with Myra about this, is sometimes it's the language that the PAs use. So when the young lady, we've actually had no conversation with this young lady, but all I know is that she's been offered £1,500 to get into a flat. She was already in a flat, but she's been offered money to it. It's like a cash incentive.
Stephen, I'm really sorry, but I am going to stop you because it's not appropriate for us to have this conversation in a public meeting. So I'm really sorry. I'll very happily pick it up with you outside the meeting. But we can't continue to have discussions about an individual. Okay, sorry.
Okay, and people don't know the individual, but I understand what you're saying. I do. Yeah, I fully understand that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, if I could come in, please, Chairman and Nicola.
Yes.
Apologies. Stephen, you didn't get the opportunity to join the meeting, and I know you were having technical issues, but I just want to point out and reiterate, as Nicola has said, this is a public meeting which is live streamed on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay.
I understand. I fully understand that. Sorry, yes.
Any private information should not be disclosed in this.
Okay, I fully understand. I just wanted to...
Just one more thing. If you want to speak or ask questions, there is a raise hand function.
Okay.
Sorry, you didn't get the opportunity. I know you were having so many technical issues.
Yeah, I was trying to catch up, sorry.
That's fine. So if you would like to just locate that, and if you'd like to ask a question, you will need to raise your blue virtual hand, and the chairman will invite you to ask your question or answer a question. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. Okay, sorry about that, but thank you. That's helped me. Thank you.
Councillor Lane, you have a question.
Yeah, no, not a question, Chair, thank you. But a comment and a message I'd like to send to those involved. Reading the report, you look at the item on mental health, I'm especially pleased, and I'd like everyone to be congratulated if there's a means of doing that, for keeping in touch with our young people. As a parent, you'd obviously want to look after them under all circumstances, and it seems to me that they've pulled out all the stops here and made things work.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. And it is, the mental health is important, especially in the times where we are at the moment in lockdown, etc. So thank you for that comment. We have Jenny Winters, who's got a hand up. Thank you. Jenny.
Sorry, I'm trying to find my mute button. Yeah, thank you. I would just like to say I was at the foster carers committee meeting, and it's just really to almost, support other foster carers out there that it has been incredibly difficult during the lockdown earlier on in the year, and obviously we've got the lockdown now, and it was greatly appreciated. I know it was mentioned earlier by Sue that there was an additional payment made and supported that was greatly received, because we do sometimes feel that there's a bit of a competition with ourselves, and not a competition, that's the wrong thing to say, but that it's difficult sometimes when there's independent agencies out there, on a complete different sort of structure to ourselves, and it's just nice to feel recognised. So just really wanted to support that thing that happened there. It was really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that report. I don't see any other hands raised. So in that case, please, can I ask, do members agree with the recommendations? The recommendations are that the Corporate Parenting Committee notes the contents of the report and also raises any queries they have with the lead officers. If anybody's got any opposition against that, please raise your hand. I don't see any virtual hands, so thank you very much. We will accept those recommendations. Item 5 is Children in Care Council Participation Report. Can I ask Shalinda Shandhu and Maria Ali to present their report, please? Stephen, could I ask you to go on to mute, please?
Oh, sorry, I do apologise.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be presenting the Children in Care Council Participation Report on behalf of myself and Shalina. So the Children in Care Council continue to meet on a monthly basis and have done so virtually during this time. We have met face-to-face when we've been able to prior to lockdown, and plan on continuing to do so after this current lockdown. There are 3 key areas of work over the last quarter have been to successfully launch the Coming Into Care packs, which were launched in early October this year. Their next project is to design goodbye cards, to design greeting cards that staff can use to say goodbye to the young people that they work with, and they're working on that currently. And they've also continued to consult with children's services, including children's social care teams, commissioning team, and virtual school to improve services for children in care. There's a quote by the Children in Care Council members in the report once they launched their Coming Into Care packs, which I'd advise everybody to read if they haven't done so. After the launch of their care packs, they had a celebration activity where they went for dinner and bowling. What we've been doing in the past few weeks prior to COVID, we luckily managed to deliver a half-term face-to-face activity programme in collaboration with Cambridgeshire County Council's participation team. It consisted of 6 socially distanced activities, and we had over 30 young people attend. During this time, we also did 2 Zoom sessions for our young people who are placed at a distance out of county. During these virtual and face-to-face activities, we did some participation work with the young people where we invited them to take part in a survey around education and their return to school, and also shared some participation activities with them. All the feedback that the Children in Care Council, Children in Charge Youth Group and Young Inspectors provide is collated by the participation team and fed back to children's social care teams via a quarterly feedback loop report, and then appropriate actions are set and monitored. And then the young people receive updates from them. In response to the second lockdown, the participation team have reissued our virtual offer leaflet via the virtual newsletters and email to remind young people, foster carers and children's social care staff of the support and opportunities available. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. That's a really good report. And before, I know Councillor Robinson has got her hand up. So, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. It sounds like you've been very adaptive with this on and off lockdown. So thank you for all your efforts. I just wanted to ask about the survey that said you mentioned that went on during half term. Are you able to give us any kind of headlines of what young people thought about those questions?
Yes, of course. I've got the survey results here in front of me because I did predict you might ask that. So generally, young people did feel very safe going back to school, and they felt that their schools did keep them well informed about how to stay safe during school. Most of them felt they had good support from their social worker. Majority of them had good contact with their IRO, though some did say that they weren't sure or they hadn't had good contact, but that we weren't sure if that was because they didn't understand who the IRO is, and it depended on age range of who we asked. Generally, they felt like they've had good support from the adults around them and around achieving with their education and how to achieve their goals. And most of them were happy with that. They didn't want to provide us with much more feedback. We did have one young person saying that they wanted us to try and support them a bit more as part of their extra feedback. Yeah, so generally they felt like they've been supported well by social workers and teachers. Yeah.
Thank you for that question and the answer. Councillor Bond, do you have a question? Or
it's not really
Sorry, Councillor Bond, we're not getting your
question. No, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, no, what it was I really just wanted to congratulate the children and the care counsellor for an excellent and thorough report. I was reading through it, having a look to see if there was any questions I needed to ask, and I didn't actually find any. So I just really just wanted to make that point and congratulate them on such an excellent report.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. I'd just like to say that it's really good to see the work that is being continued through COVID by the team and allowing the children in care and young people to take part in different things and get out and do those activities. I think it's really important for mental health reasons as well. So thank you for doing that. And also for the stuff that they're doing for other people that may come into care. So thank you. I don't see any other raised hands. So can I ask if the members agree with the recommendations? The recommendations are to note the contents of the report and raise any queries they have with lead officers. So I'm happy to accept that unless anybody else raises a hand. I think we can accept those recommendations. And thank you for the report. Item 6 is appointment of champion members. Can I ask Karen to present the report, please?
Hello. Councillors will have before them a report on the positions and the appointments for corporate member champions. Members were asked at the informal meeting if they wanted to continue with their original positions, and all members have agreed to that. This report is purely to ratify those appointments. We have unfortunately had a vacant position in the recreation and leisure activities, so if there are any nominations for that, I'd gladly take them, and we can move on to firming up those appointments.
So if nobody has any recommendations, but they wish to come forward after this meeting, please get in touch with Karen for that position. We do need to find somebody to take that position on. I see Councillor Ayres has raised a hand. Councillor Ayres.
Yes, I simply wanted to say, with regard to the recreation and leisure activities side of it, to whoever takes it on, if they could bear in mind, I've been trying to send a lot of information out about the music hub, which is now part of the education. It's under the portfolio of education now. I'm trying to get more information out to all councillors about it, and that will obviously be helpful, I hope, and that they'll look at what the music hub can do and what they are doing to assist in just dealing with music right the way across the local authority. And it is quite an interesting situation. So I wanted to make that point for whoever takes it on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ayres. I don't see any other hands raised, so I will ask members if they agree with the recommendations. The recommendations are to note the content of the report and confirm the positions and appointments of the corporate parenting champions. Sorry, I thought I saw Dennis raise his hand. Is that correct? No, that's okay. Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 7. Item 7 is a report on education provision during lockdown, attainment and education opportunities for USACS. Can I ask Dee Glover to please present her report? Welcome, Dee.
Thank you, Councillor Bisbee. Good evening, everybody. First of all, I just want to comment and echo the thoughts of previous people who have spoken about the absolute amazing children we have in our care. Their resilience has been remarkable. You know, they've gone to school when they've been able to go to school, they've worked from home when they've had to work from home, and they have been very well supported by their carers, who in turn have been creative, flexible, and we've been absolutely amazed by how people have managed during the situation. It's been very challenging. We anticipated a lot of issues, but to be honest, the children have gone back to school, they fitted in, they wash their hands, they do all the other things that we expect them to do. And I just really want to thank social workers, carers, children, and everybody else involved with them in their support of children at this time. They've been amazing. I won't go into any detail of the report, but I will invite questions.
Thank you. I have Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about laptops. I see in the report that some of the year 12s and 13s who qualify were unfortunately still waiting at the time the report was written. And of course, laptops are important for all age groups, actually, be it that they're sent home from COVID or just to help them do a good job of their homework. So have schools perhaps been directed to spend their Pupil Premium Plus grants on a laptop? Now, I know schools don't like to be directed by virtual schools, but it is, after all, £2,000 and a laptop is £200. And I think this year it's a vital piece of equipment. So what are your thoughts on trying to make sure that every LAC pupil does get a laptop?
Okay, thank you. Yes, at the outset of school closures, we immediately did a survey just to check on all our children in care and whether or not they had the equipment necessary to be able to access online and virtual lessons. And in response to that, we perhaps didn't direct schools, we did encourage schools to use Pupil Premium to purchase a laptop. Now, laptops were available through the DFE. However, we felt that all our children should have their own laptop. They shouldn't have to return it after 2 years, and it should be theirs for the duration of the pandemic, but going forward in their education. So there was some delay for some children, but we made sure that absolutely every child had the equipment they needed as quickly as possible. There is always going to be a delay. Laptops have to be ordered. There was a bit of a shortage as well. But I can assure you that every child who required the equipment was provided with it. And I can also assure you that since the writing of the report, all our year 12s and 13s who require equipment have received that.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Robinson. It was something I was going to raise, but glad you raised it for me. And Dee, thank you for that that you asked and you encouraged rather than demand. But yes, thank you. Councillor Ayres.
On much the same sort of point, can I just ask about the remote learning that took place for the children in care, not just obviously the ones who are out of the local authority, but for the children within the local authority? Were you content with the amount of remote learning that they were able to achieve and were sent, etc.?
Yes, as part of the summer term PEP process, designated teachers were required to advise us on the work they were providing and the method they were using to provide that work. And we were able to challenge through the PEPs. Obviously, we read every one of them. If we weren't happy, we're also requiring information from social workers and foster carers as well. So it was a bit of a sticky start, I won't deny that. And I'm sure anybody who's working in school will share how hard it was at the outset to provide work in a timely manner. And it did take a few weeks for that to build up. Some children had work provided, physical work packs that were delivered to them. And the quality of the delivery has increased hugely as we've gone on through the pandemic. There were some issues. We were able to challenge the schools that were perhaps delivering what we wanted them to deliver. Some children didn't want to do online work and preferred to have work packs. We supplemented those work packs and made sure that any children with whom we were working with prior to the school lockdown continued to receive our support, with the provision of actual work, phone calls, one-to-one sessions. So I'm pretty confident that we were able to manage the learning needs of our children. That's my point of view, and I think carers and pupils would have said the same thing.
And could I ask one other question, please, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was just looking at I wasn't particularly sure I understood the figures at paragraph 4. Where you mention percentages, etc. Well, all I really want to ask is, were you content with the percentages of children that did attend in these various weeks? That's the point I'm trying to get at. Were you content with those, Dee?
I was content. Yeah, I was perhaps showing off a little bit about our data retrieval and how much information we had. And it was pretty consistent throughout. The numbers gradually went up. Initially, I think carers and schools and children were reluctant to go into school, but the numbers gradually built up. But as you can see from the numbers, it was consistent. We had a lot of younger children going in, and also all we wanted to do was preserve the placement and make sure that relationships were retained. I was very clear that there shouldn't be any conflict about work. It was about making sure children were happy and emotionally content, and their emotional and education health well-being as well. So yeah, those just indicate the percentages of children who did go to school. I'm very happy that those children who wanted to go to school were able to do so. Where there was some reluctance or difficulty with the school, we intervened and made sure that a school place was made available.
Thank you. I know Nicola wants to come in. Nicola.
Thank you, Councillor Bisbee. I think just to add, so members are clear, what we had at the beginning, so what the government had said, just to remind people, was that children care didn't need to go into school if we felt that they were secure and safe in their placements. So there was a clear expectation that vulnerable children who were in the community, we were to strongly encourage them to attend school, and children of key workers, but children care didn't necessarily need to go into school. So I think what Dee's referring to is we had a very comprehensive vulnerable children's tracker that took a lot of putting together and working through, and we actually went through child by child who would benefit from being in school, placements perhaps that were a bit fragile, and carers and perhaps other children in placement would benefit from those children being in school, and also ones where we had particular concerns around their education achievement perhaps, and children with EHCPs. and those kind of issues. And we were working very hard to get those children into education. There were some children where we agreed it wasn't as critical, or perhaps where their carers were, in the language of the time, shielding, and there were particular reasons why we might want to try and do something a little bit different. So I think we were very comfortable that we had got, that the children, as Dee said, the children who wanted to be in school and needed to be in school were in school, but there were arrangements with some children quite deliberately that they weren't actually in school, and then we were monitoring them quite carefully. I think what we would say, Dee, generally is we've done extremely well in terms of percentages, and our attendance rates for children in school during lockdown, but also that period afterwards, and then since September, has actually been much higher than the national average. So actually we've done very well with schools continuing to stay open, and children going into education. So actually, I think we feel that it has been a little bit of a success story quietly. We think we've done well.
Good, thank you.
Nicola. I have a question myself, because I don't see any other hands up. My question is, do you think that the children's education has been affected? Has it been positive or a negative effect on children, whatever way they've managed to go, whether in school or online? How has that affected their education?
I think the feedback we've had is that a lot of children really enjoyed being at home, and some carers enjoyed having them at home. They were doing a lot of outdoor activities. We provided resources. So I think in terms of relationships, it really cemented some relationships. So that was a positive. Children were outside, they were learning all sorts of skills that they might not have learned. Undoubtedly, their rate of attainment and rate of progress will have suffered. And that's one of the focuses of our work this term, is to make sure that we know where children are and we can identify what the areas of support are for them. That's really what we're focusing on this term, finding out where they are and where the gaps in their learning are. And we're making sure that schools are using the additional funding to fill those gaps and get children back on track. I think it's had positive and negative effects. Some children did find it difficult going back into school. They missed their friends, they missed their teachers. But feedback from head teachers to whom I've spoken has been very positive. They've just welcomed the children back, and they've almost been skipping in with joy that they're actually able to go back into school. So it's been a very mixed picture, but overall it's been extremely positive. Can I just add, I have just got some recent data today, following on from Nicola's comments about attendance. In terms of children who are absent from school because of school closures due to COVID, I mean, I have got all the figures, but I'm only going to give you this week and last week. So last week, of the 219 children of statutory school age, 3.6% weren't in school because of a school closure. And the week before that, it was 5%. So we've got really good averages and percentages of children who are still able to access school, despite all the challenges that schools are facing at the moment. So it really is a good news story, how well they've been welcomed into school, they're attending really well, and we're going to be able to help them catch up once we've got all the data on attainment at the end of this term.
Thank you. Nicola, I see your hand still up. Is that a legacy hand?
No, it's not actually. It's partly just to direct you to Stephen, who I think doesn't know how to use your blue hand, Stephen. So I think that's.
I have seen his hand. I was just giving.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But I was also just going to add into what Dee said, in that from a social and emotional perspective as well for our children, the bubbles have actually, for some of them, been really successful, because they've been in a small bubble and have managed to develop relationships within the school before they've got kind of overwhelmed by the bigger classes and things like that. So actually, for some of our children who find that really very difficult, that actually has been one of the sort of the unexpected silver linings, if you like, of the system. So actually there have been some real positives as well. So I just wanted to add that, but it was mostly to draw you to Stephen. But I'll shut now.
Stephen, no, I did see your hand as Dee was talking. So please make your comment.
Just saying that over lockdown, I homeschooled 4 children, and I'd just like to say thank you to virtual schools for the work they did put in, You know, 2 children were given laptops, which was really appreciated. I've spoken to other carers that have been really, you know, admired the fact that the work that's been given. The Senkos were ringing every week to make sure the children were happy with the work, they understood the work. And for me personally, it brought me closer to what the children are doing at school. You know, I could see their weak points and their strong points, and it made me appreciate school a lot more than maybe I didn't. You know what I mean? So I think it's been really, and for us as a family, it's worked really well. But I'd just like to say thank you to virtual schools and the work that was sent out. The Senko's done a fantastic job, and for me, it made me appreciate schools a lot more than maybe I should have done.
I suppose, Stephen, it's that question when all parents do is, what were you doing at school today? And they say, nothing. At least you knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
So thank you. And actually, I'd like to thank everybody that's been involved in this. As Dee has already said, the carers, the foster carers, the virtual school, the schools themselves who actually continue to teach those children of people who are on the front line and children in care, etc. I think everybody that's been involved has done an absolutely fantastic job. And I do see another hand, actually. It's Jenny.
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to add about the positive around those children that went into school, because the numbers overall within the schools were quite small. It did give those children the opportunity to develop relationships with the teachers that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So some of the children who perhaps find it more difficult within the classroom setting, actually, I think that was a real positive to be able to develop that relationship with a teacher or teachers that they wouldn't have otherwise done, which I think, again, was a positive thing that have come out of this against what was actually been quite a bad backdrop, really, but another positive I just wanted to mention. Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose the smaller numbers in the classes is a positive. Yeah. So yeah, I agree with that. I don't see any other hands, so I would like to ask the members of the committee if they agree with the recommendations. The recommendations are so that the Corporate Parenting Committee notes the content of the report and raise any queries they have with the lead officers. I think we have raised questions and compliments, so unless anybody is objecting to that, I think we accept those recommendations, and thank you for that report. It's brilliant. We'll move on to item 8, which is university experience for our care leavers in relation to the impact of COVID. Can I ask Myra to present this report, please?
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm not going to go through the report in terms of every item, but I am going to highlight a few areas. Obviously, what I've highlighted here is that our normal core offer in terms of our care leavers at university, which is there at 4.21. And actually, in terms of those care leavers this year, obviously, I think it's fairly obvious to say that there has been a significant impact in terms of our care leavers. And actually, particularly for those where they didn't have staying put as a backdrop. Majority of our young people who did have staying put returned back home, and actually we supported care leavers in terms of providing money earlier for them in terms of their university support. We also ensured that they were able to go back and have their staying put arrangements, and that there was financial support for foster carers or former foster carers in relation to that. We did have a couple of situations where some care leavers who didn't have that as a fallback position, we actually created some bespoke packages for them to enable actually that they would not have financial hardship. We also increased contact from the personal advisors to ensure their emotional and mental health well-being actually was sustained through the period. Because we recognised early on that actually there was potential for them to be lonely and stuck in locations that they felt that they were isolated. And actually the feedback, and I think it goes back to Maria's feedback, we had some positive feedback from some of our care leavers at university in terms of the experience and support they felt they had from their personal advisors. Equally, running alongside this is what we had a wider work stream working with Cambridgeshire colleagues, because we recognised very early on that there were a range of issues facing care leavers that were unique to them and their situation, and university being one of those. And we recognised through having quite quickly with conversations and communications with Cambridgeshire colleagues that those young people in Cambridgeshire were facing very similar issues. So we actually pooled our resources and started working together. And actually what that enabled us to do is actually, we think, be much more effective and efficient with our resources and be very targeted for those young people that needed additional support. So I will leave it now for members to actually ask me any questions.
Thank you, Myra. I've got a funny feeling that Councillor Lane's going to ask my question. I can almost... So, Councillor Lane, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I hope not. Let's keep it diverse. If we've got different questions, that helps. Myra, my interest is in the care leavers who may not have a staying put contract. And are you confident you covered everybody who was left in this position? And is there any feedback from those who received your support? My concern is with the upcoming Christmas holidays. I don't want anybody to feel left out.
Yeah, so the particular young person that I cited there as an example, that young person didn't have staying put as a fallback position, but what she had was some relatives that she could actually go and stay with. The issue for her was actually we needed to give her that individual, that young person, and the person she was staying with some financial support, because the young person couldn't access universal credit because she's a student. She couldn't work because that had been her fallback position. That's how she'd been supporting herself at university. So what we did was we actually we gave her a weekly allowance basically, and we also gave additional fund to the carer so that actually the young person wasn't going to be out of pocket. And we did that through the summer period. The issue that you're absolutely right, we're now back in another lockdown situation, and we're revisiting those situations with our care leavers because we're anticipating there may well be an issue over the Christmas period.
Right, thanks for that, Myra. And you've answered your handling of the upcoming holiday period. You are trying to foresee any awkwardness for the young people. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for thank you for that question. And the answer, actually, it was one of my questions, but I've got another one, so don't.
Okay.
Councillor Haynes, let's see how you do on my question.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. No pressure. My question is about the personal advisors, and I'm sorry if I've missed it somehow, but what their role was before COVID, and how it is, if there was a role before COVID, how it's changed. Because I saw an article in the BBC a couple of weeks ago by a young lady who was in care. She then went to university. She said, my council supported me completely financially, but as far as kind of support and advice that you'd normally get from a parent figure, she said, I was completely on my own. And it just seems that these PAs have been doing a good job staying in touch with the young adults at university. Is that something that would be able to continue, or was it already happening? I was just wondering if you can clarify that point.
So first of all, so in terms of staying in touch, the minimum requirement is once every 8 weeks. Okay. In terms of actually the PAs in Peterborough, we have got evidence in terms of audits and spot checking. They actually do a lot more contact than that. We do pride ourselves in doing face-to-face contact. Obviously, during COVID, we did move to a more virtual approach. The issue of loneliness, what we did find actually was some of our care leavers who didn't actually previously felt they could manage, they were fine, could cope on their own. Actually, that issue of loneliness, they then re-engaged with their PAs. And actually what we saw was a lot more engagement, whether it's text messaging or whether it was actually over the phone, and particularly using Teams and WhatsApp as mediums. And actually what we saw was more engagement. So a little bit of kind of what we've seen around some young people, actually younger people, really enjoying the fact that they probably have thought we're a bit more modern now because we're actually using the types of mediums to communicate that they were much more used to. So actually, and talking to my PAs, I do actually talk to them quite a lot. They were saying actually it was really interesting having more engagement from some of the more challenging young people who felt that they were very resilient pre-COVID and actually were recognising they needed somebody to talk to. So actually we saw that engagement go up.
Thank you. Excellent question. Thank you for the answer as well. I don't see any other hands, so I'm going to ask my question. And I suppose this one could be actually aimed at Dee as well. And it's because there was no exams at the end of the scholastic year, how did the care leavers fare in their marks going forward into university? So did we get as many or more or less than we would have expected?
I have to say to you, I genuinely don't know that. All I can say to you, the number that I've cited, which is 23 care leavers, and they're all at different stages. So there were those that are actually year one that have gone to year two, and year two to year three, which I can only tell you would indicate to me they've actually passed. But Dee might have a little bit more information. I don't know really around that.
Dee, you're on mute, Dee. Sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I haven't got that information to hand. It is available. I can get it and I can add it as an addendum at a later stage. But certainly we weren't aware of any young people who weren't able to go to university because of the situation they found themselves in. We've also had some contact with young people we've supported for a number of years who have given us some information about how it's been for them as well. We've got, a young person on doing a veterinary course. He said how very different it is this time. However, he's still able to manage his work. But yeah, I'm not aware of any young people who weren't able to go to university as a result of the pandemic.
Thank you. I don't see any other raised hands, so I'm going to ask if members of the committee agree with the recommendations. The recommendations are raise any queries with the lead officer and make any recommendations that they find appropriate. Unless there's anybody who wishes to raise anything else, we're going to accept those recommendations. Item 9 is an update on the local offer for care leavers. Can I ask Michaela Berry and Joe Gilbert to present the reports, please?
Hi, I'm going to cover the first bit about the impact of COVID on the local offer, and then my colleague Joe is going to talk about over the last 6 months how we're linking the core offers between Peterborough and Cambridgeshire. So I know you've read the report, so in terms of significant highlights of the local offer and the impact COVID's had on that, I think personal advisors, as Councillor Lane pointed out, have really gone over and above to keep in contact with care leavers during this time. Care leavers are telling us they very much appreciated them just calling in to say hi and not really having a defined purpose quite often to those contacts. I think they've really enjoyed that, and it's kind of formed some really positive relationships, as Myra said, with care leavers that perhaps were not that engaged previously. I think what's been highlighted is that the personal advisors supported by the systems within Peterborough, for example, the finance team and the management have been able to respond really efficiently and effectively, and also flexibly to individual needs that have arisen out of the COVID pandemic. One of the challenges we've had is keeping the drop-ins going, and that's been something that care leavers are very much missed, and the personal advisors are very much missed offering. And actually, as an update for today, we are making some progress on being able to find a building where those can happen again quite soon, hopefully. I'll hand over to my colleague Joe though, and he can update you on the two joining of the two local offers.
Hello, yep, so I'll just pick up on a couple of the highlights about how Cambridgeshire and Peterborough are going to work more closely on the local offer for care leavers. So firstly, there's a more combined approach for local offer between Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. As Myra mentioned, we now have a care leavers work stream across both authorities, which was originally set up to look at issues facing our young people during the first lockdown, but now with a more general approach, utilising each other's strengths, pooling resources and signposting in the community, and discussing any upcoming issues that might be facing care leavers with the aim to create a seamless local offer to our care leavers across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Another highlight would probably be the combined business event planned for April 2021 to approach influential organisations and large employers in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to explain the obstacles some of our care experienced young people face whilst looking to engage in education, employment or training, and ask them to pledge their support to our young people, whether that's in their inclusion policies, offering work experiences or sponsoring initiatives that we're looking to put on, all of which will strengthen both of our local offers. And lastly, the Kickstart Scheme I've mentioned in the report, which we're going to be rolling out across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough in 2021. Now, this isn't a care leaver specific scheme, but we are looking to prioritise our care leavers for these placements and put support in place to help our young people engage with these throughout, as we see it as an ideal stepping stone into the workplace for some of these young people. We are working to try to develop these roles to match our young people's aspirations, pair it with relevant training, and also develop a progression plan for these roles to hopefully feed into permanent positions or apprenticeships within the local authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Michaela. I have Councillor Ayres first, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think that all this work that you're doing now in trying to look after these care leavers and try to get them employment is so important, because of course the situation for all young people now at the moment is well, I suppose it must feel pretty grim for them, and it's not easy to get anyone involved. And so all credit to you, you're doing lots of and putting lots of effort into that. I was particularly concerned about the last paragraph in the report about the Kickstart Scheme, because I can see that this aspirational audit is ever so important as well. I mean, we want people to work up their aspirations and that they can have a go, don't we, and try to get into the work that they want to do. But I was concerned about this, what seems to be a sort of financial gap, which I don't think I'd appreciated. And is there anything that we can do about that, or is there anything that we can do to report on it to government or something of that order? I think it might be Joe who might respond to that. I'm not sure.
Sure, I'll come back to that. It is something which is a problem. It's kind of a mix of national issues and local issues all in one, which is quite confusing. I think that the long and short of it isn't that benefits are too much for those outside of work at the moment. I think what there is a lack of, in my view, support in the benefit scheme, in particular housing benefit, for our young people taking on some of these aspirational roles. So by that I mean, if you're in the YMCA or semi-independent accommodation and you're on universal credit, housing benefits are paying for your accommodation. But as soon as you start working, you are then responsible for the cost of your accommodation. So for their peers, they will often have the support of a home around them. But for our care leavers, this is a bit more difficult. So it almost funnels them into full-time roles which aren't potentially as aspirational, whereas we'd love them to do some of these other roles like apprenticeships, which might not be as strong financially, but it is the right thing to do to follow your aspirations. So it is quite a complex mix of issues, I think, there.
Right, well, thank you for that, for explaining that, because I'll put a bit of thought into it if I can as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question, and actually thank you for the answer. I now have Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Just something struck me before while Joe and Michaela were speaking. Lots of good stuff that's coming out of the PAs that's been reflected on what a lot of people have been saying. Has it made a difference to the case loading, the fact that you're now using Zoom and WhatsApp and things, and the amount of contact? Because I'm sure you can probably be in one place and get around and talk to people. It sounds like it's had a positive benefit. And is things like Zoom and WhatsApp now here to stay? And will that have an effect again on things like caseloads, contacts and support that people can give and receive?
Yeah, I think it's definitely here to stay. I think that there's no kind of substitution though for face-to-face visits, and we are fully aware of that. Obviously the things you pick up in a face-to-face visit, you just can't replace that with anything else. But I think as part of a package, and obviously what we're seeing is young people very much appreciate that kind of contact as well. So I think definitely still here to stay. I think you're right. I think when they were unable to do virtual visits, apart from the most important, which did still carry on when young people really needed face-to-face support. That did still happen, but that has freed up a lot of time in terms of travelling around the country quite often. So yeah, absolutely. So a package moving forward, I think.
Yeah,
right.
Very much in addition to, not instead of. I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nicola, I believe you want to come in there.
Thank you, Councillor Busy. Yes, just to sort of comment. So I'd completely agree with Michaela, but I'd also just want to draw councillors' attention to, at the minute we have agreement to what are called easements of some of our statutory responsibilities with children in care. So there is a current the government passed a law, I think people, an amendment to the Children Act, which allows us to do things slightly differently temporarily. There has actually been a judicial review of that, which unfortunately the government did lose today. So some of this relates to what we're allowed to do slightly differently at the minute in relation to children in care and care leavers, and it's meant to support local authorities during the pandemic. So we will need to think about what works for young people, and absolutely, Michaela's absolutely right, for some young people this has been a much more successful way of communicating and more effective, but we do still have statutory responsibilities about keeping in touch and seeing our young people, and that will continue and will revert, I think, quite shortly. In terms of the easements we've got. Just to reassure you, Councillor Jones, the caseloads we continue to count by child, not by the nature of the contact. And we will continue. What we do is we project how many care leavers we're going to have year on year, and then we look at how many personal advisors we need to manage that. And Myra and I have a look and go forward on those numbers. And at the moment it's manageable, but we probably do need to review that again. Okay.
Thank you, Nick. I know you've got a question, Councillor Jones, but Councillor Bond has been waiting. I'll come back to you if that's okay. Councillor Bond.
Yes, it's just.
Sorry, Councillor Bond, we're not receiving.
In reference to. Can you not hear me at all?
And now, yes.
Okay, right. It's in reference to 4.6.7, the Duke of Edinburgh Award. It's the last sentence where you say that they're going to look to approach organisations for similar initiatives. Have you thought about contacting Girl Guide Association? Because I am a Brownie guider, and over the last 5 years I've had many Duke of Edinburgh Award students go through my Brownie guiding unit. I was just wondering if that would be an idea for you, and if so, you could always contact me and I can put you into contact with our district commissioners if you would like.
Thank you for that. I think Joe would like to come in on that.
Thank you, Councillor Bond, and that's a really great offer. Thank you very much. I think what we often find is funding isn't often there for Duke of Edinburgh for 18 plus, but I'm more than happy to speak to you outside of this and talk about anything that we can do there for any of our care leavers. I think it's a great initiative for some of our young people to take part in, and this is a good example of kind of involving corporate aunts and uncles, so looking at other organisations that are looking to fund or put young people through Duke of Edinburgh schemes and matching up there. But I'll contact you afterwards if that's okay, and we can talk about that in a bit more detail. That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bond. I think actually if you look at all the cadets, whether it's police, army, Air Force, Navy, they've all got cadet forces that put people through, so it might be good to get in touch with all those different groups. So thank you. We have Councillor Jones, who back on his question.
Sorry, Nicola, that wasn't an elephant trap waiting to be sprung, I promise you. It was literally the fact that in terms of the contact, you know, we've got these easements as though, yes, face-to-face is the preferred route, you know, the de facto way to do it. But it seems to me that people now are reaching out, young people, we're all far more comfortable now with Zoom and that form of technology. Can that now, will that start to be factored in? Or, you know, if this vaccine magically appeared by next Easter, everything would have to revert to back as it was. The easements go and people are going, hang on a minute, I actually quite like that way of doing things. You know, is there any sort of thought about that?
Nicola, you've got your hands raised to respond. Thank you.
So I think, so I would agree with you in lots of ways, I think, Councillor Jones. I think what we would like is to be able to be in a position where we can choose what's the right thing for each young person. So I think that's where we'd like to get to. And obviously at the minute, we're very constrained, as is everybody else, by the pandemic and what we can and can't do. And what we might like to do. So I think in an ideal world, you would be able to look at each young person and say, or child, and say, well, what's your preferred method of communication? What do you like to, do you want to see us in person? Do you want us to text? Do you want us to WhatsApp? And we can do that to a certain extent. And obviously the older young people get, so once they're over 18, that we have a lot more flexibility, but the easements will end. It is very clearly, you know, a statutory responsibility. And I think I suppose personally, this is a personal opinion, I hope Myra would and Michaela will share with me, but it is a personal view, that those statutory responsibilities are there for a very good reason. So I don't think we would want those to go, but I think there is an opportunity for social care generally, and we have the Association of Directors of Children's Services, who I know are working with the government and with Ofsted to have some discussion about how do we want to try and take some of this forward in a practical way that's helpful at a national level. But I think generally speaking, most of it, 95% of it, will revert to where it was before, because it is there for a reason. And it is about safeguarding our children and young people. But yes, some flexibility, we certainly will continue to try and build that in as far as we can.
Thank you, Nicola. I think it's what everybody is looking at. I don't think we'll ever get back to where we were before, as people say, the norm. I don't think that equates anymore. I think what we'll do is, we've learned quite a lot through COVID, should it be in our work or our ordinary life. And I think what we need to do, and I think this is what you're talking about, Nicola, is you're going to take what you find is good and what's worked well, that can enhance what you're already doing. I think that's what everybody is hoping, and I presume that's where everybody wants to be, is let's enhance what the provision is. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. That sums it up beautifully. I think that's exactly what we'd like to be able to do.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't see any other hands raised. So thank you very much for the reports. The recommendation is that the Corporate Parent Committee note the attached report and raise any queries of the lead officer and make any recommendations as they find appropriate. I know we haven't had any recommendations, but it was a very good report, so thank you. Item 10 is a report on work of the Corporate Parenting Committee for the Children and Education Scrutiny Committee. This is for the year 2019 to 2020. Nicola, can I ask you to present the report, please?
You can indeed. So people are going to have to cast their minds back a bit, and I think this is one of the difficulties. Is it's very hard, I think, it's always difficult to think back a year, but particularly this year, it's very challenging to think pre-COVID. Actually, I think. But this is your report around what the committee did over that sort of municipal year. And what you all achieved. Some of this period I wasn't managing the service, so just to acknowledge that, and Myra has supported in making sure that we covered the issues for the whole year, really. So I know you know most of this. This will go to Scrutiny Committee. So what I'm hoping to get tonight is your views about whether this does appropriately cover the work that you feel the committee undertook, whether there's any changes you'd like us to make to the report, and then endorsement to take it forward to Scrutiny at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. I'm sure we all have read this report. Is there anything that anybody thinks that's been missed out, that they want to add or take away maybe, or anything that you want a bit more emphasis on at all? Councillor Ayres.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You were very kind in paragraph 436 to mention me in a role as champion, but I think there has since then. I think that Councillor Bashir did do another report, although I don't think I was actually at that meeting, and she did it in conjunction with Pat Carrington of the City College, and I just wonder whether that should be made, because I think it was within that time span, Nicola. So would you mind checking that out for me, please?
Of course, and that's probably a bit I wasn't around for, Lynn. So of course we'll double check that, and we'll make sure that Councillor Bashir is mentioned in that.
If it's appropriate, which I think it is, but anyway, if you wouldn't mind looking, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ayres. Councillor Robinson, you wish to...
Yes, just on the same theme as Councillor Ayres, I think I can remember Councillor Day also submitted a champions report and her talking about what she did, and I submitted one for health and had meetings with Deborah Spencer.
So what we'll do, so that's fine. So if I take the champions bit and just look to expand it a bit and be a bit more specific in terms of who did what, yeah, I think that and then obviously what we can do is because we won't have another committee before scrutiny, but if that's all right with Councillor Bisbee, I'll circulate it back round and then people can check that those accurate, for accuracy, we've got those bits right. Yeah, I'm very happy to do that.
I think everybody would be agree with that. Councillor Ayres, you've got your hand up again, or is that a legacy one? No, that's a legacy one. Yeah, I don't think we need that as a recommendation. I think that's just a case of checking the accuracy, and I do think that the champions have put some really good reports in, which means that they've done some really good work behind the scenes to be able to produce those reports. So, and I thank all the champions for the work that they did do and that they continue to do, because it does make a big difference, and it gives the rest of us an idea of what's happening in the background that we may not know, and asking those awkward questions sometimes is really good. So thank you for all the champions, and Nicola, thank you for that report. And we do understand that you weren't there for some of that. So yeah, if we can check that, that's brilliant. So
absolutely.
The recommendations are that the Corporate Parenting Committee agrees that the annual report is accurate once we get the updates and reflect the work of the committee over the last 12 months, and agrees to submit the annual report to the Children and Educational Scrutiny Committee for noting as per the Corporate Parenting Committee's terms of reference. So I think once we've got that update and everybody's had a check and we agree with, but please do reply to Nicola whether you're happy. Don't just say, oh, I'm not going to reply because I've got nothing. Please reply to that so that Nicola is happy that everybody has actually agreed that, and then we can have that go forward. So thank you. If you do find any issues, Nicola, you can always contact me and we can discuss it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So thank you for that report. Item 11 is the Annual Reviewing Officer report. Can I ask Marie Saunders to represent the report, please?
Thank you, Councillor Bisbee. Thanks for inviting us. I'm accompanied by one of my very experienced IROs this evening, Linda Conroy, as well. I have to say, actually, my report seems somewhat outdated, listening to a lot of the conversations this evening already in regards to COVID. Historically, we've always awaited the national comparable data, which isn't ratified till later on in the year, to be able to produce our IRO report. So ordinarily, this report for 2019-20 would have been presented to you in March or soon after next year. So I'm really pleased that we made the decision that you probably didn't need that data. You probably get lots of that in other reports elsewhere. So we're now aiming to complete these reports very soon after the end of the financial year. And we look forward very much to being invited next summer to present the 2021 report. So I haven't really prepared very much in light of COVID, but I'm sure you've all read the report and I'm sure there'll be a couple of questions about that, but maybe as a way of a little bit of an update since COVID. The team, the IROs, have continued to work extremely hard in identifying ways and supporting young people to be as engaged as possible in the review process. And I absolutely mirror some of the comments that were made earlier on about young people and virtual technology. I think it's probably a lot of us adults that have struggled with it a lot more. And whilst we recognise that it has been quite difficult for some young people, some parents, carers and other professionals to actually get to grips with that sometimes and not have that physical connection with people. We've also acknowledged that for some of these young people, they've actually been able to be a lot more vocal in their reviews, and we've seen some really lovely stories of young people who ordinarily wouldn't really engage too much with their reviews that have actually felt empowered to do that from the comfort of their own sitting room or bedroom on their laptops or what have you, with the support of their IROs. So yeah, I think work continues. It's all about being very creative at the moment, and it's about putting in a lot of energy and effort to make sure that we try and engage those people as much as we possibly can. Linda, I'm not sure if you have anything that you wanted to add to that before we hand over.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's been, tricky for everybody, hasn't it, the whole COVID situation? But thankfully, no childcare review was cancelled because of COVID. So we were able to have childcare reviews, which has meant that the care planning for those children hasn't drifted, and what those children's needs and actions have been completed by the social work team, who again have worked extremely hard to ensure that the children's needs have been met. Particularly around contact has been a tricky issue, as you can imagine, and I think even that had to stop due to the restrictions. There was very imaginative ways that the social work teams tried to ensure some sort of contact between the children and their families, and that's been very, very important, as you can imagine, especially for the children and their parents, because it's key to keep those relationships going in terms of when children are in care. So that's been really successful, I think, and a lot's been learned from that. And then going forward, we've encouraged and supported face-to-face contact as it's been okay to do so, and ensure that children are seeing their families as much as they possibly can. But yeah, any questions?
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Yes, thank you for the report. It's really detailed and it's something that really fascinates me. I attend care reviews on behalf of school, and I think that IROs do a very important role in delivering progress and change in children's cases. But one thing I noticed was that out of 1,046 reviews in that reporting period, it mentions that in terms of having the pre-meeting, the consultation, be it on the phone or in person, that actually that happened 522 times, which actually only counts as 50%. But I know the report says that that level of meetings is exemplary. So I was a little bit surprised that 50% is exemplary, and what's the target or ways to improve that? I appreciate the report says that kids maybe aren't always that keen on doing them, but I have seen those pre-meetings be so effective between a child and an IRO. Yeah, what kind of we looked at in the year ahead, and is there any kind of target you're aiming towards to bump it up? And then just to jump in with a second question, where I might be easier, I was just wondering about churn. I think I've seen where a young person, a child has the same IRO year after year, it's really effective. So within your service, have you been able to kind of maintain the same people on the same cases, or have you suffered any kind of churn through moving on or anything?
Okay, thank you. So to just address your first question, the IROs absolutely aim to consult with all children where possible. So we would count the data in two ways. We would count it as a whole cohort of children in care. We would take the other data comparable for those children who are over the age of 4. The IROs do try extremely hard to meet with those children between reviews face to face. Sometimes they would take place over virtual media if the child prefers. Pretty much usually the teenagers who would prefer to do that, I have to say. But that is always an area that we're continually trying to drive up as much as possible. And you're absolutely right, a lot of cases, we do see children where they have consistent IROs, some of them for years. And we've even got some children in care at the moment where the IROs were IROs to a family member previously. So we're very, very lucky in that we have a very, very stable, very solid team. And it's very rare, I have to say, that we have to reallocate cases. So pretty much the children are getting that consistency. And we all know, you know, the world of social work at the moment is very turbulent, and sometimes those IROs are actually more consistent as a presence than social workers. So again, that consultancy in between is very, very important to keep up as well. I hope that's answered your question.
And thank you for the answer. Councillor Ayres.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I, like Councillor Robinson, I saw the word exemplary and love that. I always do in reports. And I also particularly saw in your children in care reviews participation in paragraph 9 too, that 100% of looked after children over the age of 4 had participated in their review to some degree. And I thought that's very good. And I do want to congratulate you all, because that's the important thing, is to get them involved, isn't it? And I noticed towards the end of your report, you put down an area of development to increase the number of children and young people chairing and co-chairing their review. And I just wondered, what sort of age do you have that happen, and how does it work? If you could answer that one for me. I did have one other small, lesser question, but if you wouldn't mind answering that for me, I should be grateful, Marie.
Of course, how we're going to encourage young people to share and co-chair. Yeah, it's quite difficult sometimes, because you get some teenagers who are very, very outspoken, they're very confident, and a lot of the time it would just take a little bit of support from the IRO to get them in a room and be able to share, maybe starting off with talking through the agenda with people and building up that confidence to actually be able to put people on the spot, you know, and ask those questions. With other children, sometimes it's a slowly process where we would start maybe asking them to, if they feel comfortable reading out the agenda, or maybe if they want to start with some questions at the end of that. And with some other children, as I say, it is that slow process of giving them the support. I think going back to the consistency of having the same IRO more often than not helps to give them that support to do that. I think it would be quite interesting, actually, having seen the last few months where we've seen that shift, as I said, with some of the children that are maybe not always so confident in their review. All of a sudden they want to be part of the whole thing, and you know, they're very vocal, they're really testing the professionals on the call. So it'd be interesting, I think, to see to have those conversations with those young people as to how they would like to see their reviews go in the future, and how they feel they could be, you know, be given the confidence really to be more involved. But absolutely, yes, we need to drive that up as much as possible.
Yes, Thank you. Thank you. I think that's very important. The only other question I got was in relation to the paragraph 10.2 about these professional feedback forms, which rather surprised me. Out of during 2019-20, a total of 151 feedback forms were completed by professionals. This is a significant decrease on last year, where over 700 were received. I wondered what had happened there, because this was prior to the lockdowns. This is referring to the year prior, isn't it? Not the present year, which I could understand more.
It is. That's absolutely right. And I think probably, just to offer an answer to that, is probably a combination of a couple of things. I think we decided that actually as professionals, particularly social workers, they're asked to complete so much paperwork. And as an IRO service, it's really important for us to get really honest, transparent feedback where possible. So we did make a decision that we would only offer those feedback forms unless they were asked for I think it was second reviews, just to give people a bit of a break, really, in completing those. I think the other thing that we did, maybe a bit ambitiously, was to ask people to actually email feedback forms back to us rather than sort of hand them in. And we didn't want to feel people were under a lot of pressure while you're standing over them to complete a form and hand it back to you, although you do seem to get a lot more returns that way. And unfortunately, like I say, I think that was a little bit ambitious, and you tend not to, when you've walked away from a meeting, want to spend sort of 10 or 15 minutes filling those out. But I hasten to add, the feedback that we did receive is really, really helpful to us. So although we're looking at a very big dip in numbers, I still think the information in there is very qualitative.
Right. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think actually when you're on about chairing the meetings and doing that, in our, you may or may not know, but in our informal meetings, I brought in the fact that the children should co-chair the meetings that we have, so they co-chair alongside myself. And at the first they were very reluctant, but now they've got very, very confident, and it's brilliant to see the confidence that comes out of them. So yeah, I'm all for that. That's brilliant. Thank you. Councillor Lane.
Yep, thank you, Chair. And Marie, I'm not sure if you're able to help with this, or perhaps Nicola might want to come in. My concern is with, in your report, item 5, the workload demand. Your handbook says it's acceptable for a caseload of between 50 and 70 children in care. Now, during the year that the report reports on, the figures are consistently between 60 and 67 cases. Now, that's up the upper end of that bracket there. Are we confident, or are you confident that you can continue at that level, or do you need extra capacity? Because surely, if they're down in the lower end of that bracket, then an officer would be more competent and could be able to give more attention to the cases in question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. In response to that, the figure is taken over a 12-month period. So it's very difficult when you're working these out, because you've got a constant fluid sort of pathway of children coming into care and leaving care as well. So for somebody that has a caseload, they may have a caseload of sort of 62, for instance, for a portion of that year. And because they might take on a few new children coming into care at the end of the year, that might knock it up a little bit. But generally, we find that the caseloads are quite static across the service. We do rigorous monitoring on a monthly basis. We also have supervisions, obviously, with our IROs as well, just to make sure that we're able to maintain the reviews, the monitoring work that goes on in between that, the consultations, the case recordings and what have you. So at the moment, as I say, because that does fluctuate, and I have to say, at times the levels of children in care look to be quite high compared to another month. But when you look at it over the course of a year, take this year, for example, I think in October, we were around the same level as we were last last October, although we've had a few spikes and troughs in between. So it does work out.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Nicola, I believe you want to come in on this as well.
So I think Marie covered 95% of it, I think, very well. And I think what we're very fortunate in is that we do have a very static number of children in care. So it's different children in care. So it will change obviously for IROs in terms of their caseload. But we had a small spike, which we think was to do with COVID over the summer, very early autumn. But we are very stable within about 5 to 10 children at any given point in terms of numbers. So that does actually make it a lot easier to plan around all of these things. I think what we know is that we have a very effective IRO service, and I think that comes across in the report. I think from the operational side of things, sometimes that can feel a little frustrating, as I'm sure Myra would testify, because we are very much kept on our toes and monitored and chased about any concerns and any issues for young people in care. But actually, we see very clearly that there's a very effective what we call an IRO footprint on a child's file and involvement in their case. And I think that's a good indication that actually the caseloads are manageable. If numbers did continue to rise, then we would have discussions about whether we needed more staff or not. But I think currently we have a very effective service. They're very experienced and they work very well with our young people.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add, I was a bit critical with anybody, but just that your staff's well-being is important to us, because obviously it has an impact on our children. Thank you very much for your answer, though.
Thank you.
And thank you for that report. I don't see anybody else's hand up, only Steve's. I hope you're going to take that one down yet. Thank you. So the recommendation is that the members of the Corporate Parenting Committee note the attached report and raise any queries with the lead officers. So unless we've got any hands raised against that, I think we've done it. So thank you very much. Move on to item 12. And I do realise that we're starting to get short of time. So the performance data for children in care and care leavers September 2020. Can I ask Nicola to present this report, please?
Thank you. I am very conscious of time, so I think if I just ask if there are any questions. It's the usual data that members have seen previously, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you. Nicola, you've got away very easy because nobody has raised their hands. So thank you very much. So I think what we can do is ask the members of the committee to note the content of the report, and there were no questions to be raised. So thank you very much for that report. We now have item 12A, the health report. Can I ask Sarah Hamilton to present the report, please?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bisbee. So we'll also take the report as read. I think there are three things just worth raising. First of all, it is joy to welcome Catherine York today to you all, and she'll look forward to being part of this going forward. We obviously have to acknowledge we have had a vacancy since March this year, and despite a number of attempts to recruit, I have not been successful to this point, but we're glad to have Catherine with us. And it's, from my perspective, been a real privilege to support our provider health team during the coming months, over the coming months that have been, rather, going backwards rather than forwards. And actually, I'll really miss being that closely involved with LAC Health. It's been a real privilege, and they've done an amazing job. I think we would certainly say something that has helped us to continue to work effectively with our colleagues in the local authority is the health and care meeting that has happened twice a week, twice a month, sorry, not twice a week, between colleagues in the operational teams to support one another and make sure that we were able to prioritise the needs of children in care as best we could across our organisations. I'm conscious that you may be of concern about the health assessment figures within the report, and I just want to bring you up to speed with the October figures that I have from our health provider. There were capacity issues in the team during earlier parts of the summer. That is rectified now. They're back up to capacity, and for October, IHAs were sitting at 78%. And RHA's review health assessments were at 80%, which is much more improved, and they'll continue to manage that. And we're looking forward to meeting Councillor Robinson in, I think, 10 days' time, myself and Catherine in due course. So that will be a joy to be able to have a proper time to chat and get to know you better. Thank you for bearing with us. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Sarah. Just let's make sure that that meeting is virtual or
yes,
socially distanced. I'm sure you're going to end up with some good questions, and we'll end up with a good report from Councillor Robinson. So I don't see any questions for you. So again, the recommendation is that the committee notes the contents of this report and raise any queries with the lead officers. So I can't see anybody objecting to that. So thank you very much for that report.
Thank you.
Item 13 is members' issues. So members that are not part of the core corporate parenting committee membership, but hold corporate parenting responsibilities, are invited to raise any issues they have with regard to the services provided to children in care. I cannot see anybody coming in on that. So we'll move on to the next item. Item 14 is the draft work programme for 2020 to 2021 and review the work of the 2019-2020 report. So Karen, can I ask you to present this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is a report that covers the work, review of the work carried out by the committee last year and the actions and recommendations that have been made. That is appended at, that is attached as Appendix 4. We also have the draft work programme. There were a couple of work programme sessions held, one with the children in care at the informal meeting, and then a mop-up meeting after that with group representatives just to finalise the work programme that you have before you today. I don't know whether Nicola wants to make any comment on the work programme.
I don't think so particularly, unless members have any questions about it. I think we're following the principle still of the informal formal meetings and trying to make the work plan work around that with themed meetings as far as we can. It doesn't work perfectly, but we're trying to do that. But I think if there's any questions or queries about it, I'm happy to take them, but I don't think I've got anything substantive to add to that, Karen.
Thank you. Councillor Ayres, you're great. Got your hand,
yes, thank you. Can I just ask this? I looked at the work programme, and of course I couldn't remember when we started having corporate parenting committee meetings again, but I thought it might have been the September date that's mentioned in this list here. But I wondered whether there'd been anything this year about the mental health and well-being side, whether there'd been a report to us about that, about the children in care, because that was mentioned in the minutes in November, and probably there has, and I wasn't at the meeting or something like that. Thank you. So somebody can answer. Is that you, Sarah?
I'm probably best placed to answer that one. So I think the plan had been that there would be a report to this meeting, but due to both a number of delays from our perspective and also waiting for Catherine to join us so that we had a designated nurse who was here as well with working with our provider. It's scheduled to come in February, I think. So yeah.
Oh, it's in the February meeting, is it?
I think that's right from my memory, from which the date that Karen's given me.
There's one in March, there's one in January.
Sorry, there is a future meeting in the first quarter of next year that I know, or the quarter four of next year that it's coming to. I know there's a date, I just couldn't tell you the date off the top of my head.
Right, March probably then.
So,
okay.
So I think, Lynn, it will come to the next formal meeting.
Right, good, excellent. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. So the recommendations are that the Corporate Parenting Committee, 1, notes the 2019-2020 year in review and makes recommendations on the future monitoring of these items where necessary. Item 2, determines the priorities and approves the draft work programme for formal and informal meetings for 2020 and 2021, attached at Appendix 1. Number 3 is note the recommendations and actions monitoring report attached at Appendix 4 and considers if further monitoring of these during the 2020-21 municipal year is required. 4 is notes the terms of reference for this committee as set out in Part 3, Delegation Section 2, Regulations Committee Functions 2.4. So thank you very much for that. And item 15 is the next meeting. So we have 2 meetings coming up. One is the 20th of January in 2021, which is the informal meeting. And as you just heard, 17th of March, which is the 2021 formal meeting. So unless there is anything else that anybody wants to say, I don't see any hands. So thank you very much to everybody who presented a report today. Thank you to everybody for turning up, and reporters, etc., that are listening online, for staying with us. And I would like to commend everybody for all the hard work that's been going on this year, because it's not been easy, and people have had to learn lots of new skills. People who weren't necessarily up with the IT, who've now probably become really good and could teach the children now. So you don't have to go to the young children to get your IT fixed, you can do it yourself. So thank you very much to everybody who's been here tonight and who continues to do the work. So that's brilliant. It is the last one for this meeting. So I'd like to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Let's hope that COVID is taken in hand and we get some kind of relief from this in the forthcoming year. I know we'll meet in other committee meetings, but thank you from me.